not often that I get to introduce a man who seems so in command of his world as our next distinguished speaker. Hamid Biglari has managed to reinvent himself 3 times in his lifetime, each time landing a career more successful than the last. And it doesn't surprise any of us who know him. 2 careers later, he's the vice chairman of Citicorp, Citigroup's main operating arm, a $60 billion revenue business with operations in over 100 different countries. Please help me welcome the Public Affairs Alliance of Iranian Americans, chairman of the board, our first grassroots national membership organization, Dr. Hamid Biglari.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I have to say that this event was built as an event to inspire the youth of our community, but I personally felt like I was the most inspired person listening to the first 3 speakers. So it's been an extraordinary event, and it feels like it's an inspiration for all Iranian Americans, not just the youth. There are those who know what they're going to do in life from the time they're very young. I think the first 3 speakers are examples of that. They know that they're going to be journalists or engineers or scientists or whatever. They have a calling. For better or for worse, I was not one of them. I was more like the cartoon character Curious George. My problem growing up was that I was interested in too many things. I spent a year studying architecture in college, then I switched and got 1 degree in mathematics, then another degree in physics, then I got a PhD in astrophysics, and then, like Curious George, I jumped across 3 very different careers, each just when I was beginning to hit my stride in them. My family, colleagues, and friends were left scratching their heads each time I made a decision to change, wondering what on earth was going through my head. So after 30 years of creating confusion for this event, I've finally taken a stab at explaining how I've thought about my education and my career. If there is an aphorism that describes the philosophy of my professional career, it's one by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. In Life in the Time of the Cholera, he says, "Human beings are not born once and for all on the day their mothers give birth to them, but life obliges them to give birth to themselves over and over again." I believe that the key to professional success is to continuously reinvent yourself, and to do it when you're hitting a high note rather than when you're on the way down. It isn't a strategy without risk, and timing and judgment matter a great deal. But if done thoughtfully, the rewards more than offset the risks and create a richer personal experience. As Rudy said, I've been reborn 3 times thus far in my professional life. I've been a nuclear physicist, a management consultant, and a Wall Street executive. At first blush, these 3 careers appear completely unrelated. But although it wasn't apparent to me at the time I made each of these transitions, they ended up building upon each other. To see how that's possible, it may help to reframe these transitions with a music analogy. I've been a soloist, a performer in a string quartet, and an orchestra conductor. Each one of these experiences has either given me new skills or taught me something valuable about leadership that laid the foundation for future career growth. To explain how these experiences link to each other, I will share 3 lessons from each of these 3 careers, and then try to synthesize them into several takeaways. My first career was as a physicist in academia. I learned what insight was all about, the importance of explaining something in simple terms, and how to speak in front of crowds. First, I learned that insight came more from asking the right question than from finding the right answer to a question. The hardest part of any undertaking is to narrow it down to the core issues that need to be resolved, because too often there is far more noise than information, and it's very easy to get distracted by noise. This is more commonly called failing to see the forest for the trees. The shape of the forest manifests itself only if one can lift oneself far enough above the trees to see it. Second, I learned that you don't truly understand a subject until you can explain it in a simple way to someone else. That is what you learn from teaching, but it has broad applicability in life. People who say something is too difficult to explain are deluding themselves. Being forced to think through how to communicate simply is a critical skill in life, and you are forced to learn how to do that as an academic. Third, I got a regular workout getting up in front of a group of people and speaking with limited preparation. That is what you do every day when you teach or lecture. People come back at you with question after question, and you have to get comfortable thinking on your feet. With enough practice, it becomes second nature. But I didn't realize at the time how useful this skill would prove over the course of the rest of my career. My second incarnation was as a management consultant. I learned the meaning of teamwork, how to prioritize, and how to listen. I made the point earlier that going from being a physicist to being a management consultant was like going from being a soloist to playing one part in a string quartet. As a theoretical physicist, you live and die by what original work you produce on your own. That's obviously a simplification of reality because, of course, you interact with others. But you are, relatively speaking, in control of your own destiny, and not much else impacts it. By contrast, in consulting, your success depends almost entirely on the performance of the weakest member of the small team that gets assembled for a client project. I therefore had to reorient myself to a different definition of success, one that subordinated my individual interests to the interests of the team as a whole. A second important skill I picked up in consulting was prioritization or time management. In academia, you have unlimited time but very limited resources. In business, you have unlimited resources but very limited time. This leads to a fundamental difference in how you solve problems. In academia, you look for a relatively complete solution to a problem that you pose as narrowly as you can. Problems in business are more complex, don't lend themselves to clean-cut answers, and you can almost never afford to look at every aspect of the problem. You need to get to 80% of the answer with 20% of the work, something referred to as the 80-20 rule. Finding the 80-20 rule is a very different way of problem solving. And by asking the right question in the right way, you can streamline getting to the answer. And remember that searching for the right question was a skill I picked up as a physicist. The third key skill I picked up in consulting was learning to listen. Careful listening is one of the most under-recognized assets in the world. It is a fact of life that most people like to talk, and what they like best to talk about is themselves. By the way, this is at least as true for highly accomplished people as it is for those who are in a hurry to explain just how much they would be capable of accomplishing if only other people would just get out of the way. Interestingly, it isn't just what is being said that matters. Peter Drucker, a famous management consultant, once said that the most important thing in communication is to hear what isn't being said. You learn as much about people from what they don't say as from what they do say. But there is yet another important reason to listen. Listening is a sign of respect. As Tom Friedman points out, it's not just what you hear by listening that's important. It's what you say by listening that's important. People want to know that they've been heard.